Good afternoon and welcome to this BIA October Brexit webinar. My name's Steve Bates, and in the next half an hour we hope to be able to give you an update on where we are at in negotiations, which have been exciting this week, some developments on the UK side from government and parliament, what's going on at the EU, including the latest on the European Medicines Agency, and then update you a little bit on what we hope to do as a BIA, which is slightly different going forward. If you've been following this series for some time, you'll know that we put these up on YouTube, and hopefully they're useful if you're not able to make this in real time or want to share with a colleague. Last time we focused particularly on the movement of people discussions at the UK level, whilst also updating on the negotiations, which I think will probably be overtaken by events since that time. I think we're keen, first off, to give you an update on the negotiations. Obviously, these have taken place this week, and my colleague Laura Collister has joined me to give you an update on this. You'll see, probably from reading the news, that there was an interesting dinner in Brussels last night. Theresa May, David Davis, Jean-Claude Juncker and Michael Barnier had a nice dinner, and they published a joint statement saying review the progress made in Article 50 negotiations so far have been agreed, and that these efforts should, keyword, accelerate over the months to come. So no conclusion, but a suggestion that things need to go faster, and I think that's something from an industry side that we would certainly recognise and support. Laura, how did the European Council meeting, which has happened only yesterday and today, go?
This morning the Prime Minister gave a press conference halfway through the European Council. So I think it's pretty clear UK government isn't quite where it wanted to be, but it's a lot closer than it was, and there's much more conciliatory tone from the other EU leaders. There's a picture there of Theresa May with Angela Merkel and Macron. I think at the previous European Council meeting she was stood on her own, whereas this one they were all stood together. So some key points from the press conference this morning. She's saying they're ambitious and positive for the negotiations, but still have some way to go. Recognise that there's lots been achieved. She talked specifically around the rights of EU nationals living in the UK and UK nationals living in the EU, and there was associated number 10 communications coming out around that. She did also say that, let me be clear, whatever happens, we want EU nationals and their families to stay, and we are in touching distance of a deal on that. In terms of Northern Ireland, they agreed there can't be a physical infrastructure at the border, and the common travel area must continue. If we go to the next slide.
Well, as we do, I think this is going to be the one for the caption competition, isn't it? What's Angela Merkel and what's Macron saying? And prizes on a postcard. Well, I think of some BIA. You can have a BIA mug if you get us a good caption for this one. And I was interested to see that the new method of communication to reassure people is posting on Facebook. The Prime Minister has now posted an article on Facebook about citizens' rights, which is an interesting new development.
Yeah. So from the European Council side, Donald Tusk has been on Twitter a lot today, and I think there was one in the middle of the night as well, talking about a deal. The one in the middle on the slide, that was posted about 2:30 in the morning. Some comments today at lunchtime from Donald Tusk. These bullet points are from his statement that was published, saying that reports of deadlock have been exaggerated. Progress isn't sufficient, but that doesn't mean there's been no progress at all. The Council has agreed to start internal preparatory discussions in relation to a framework for future relationship and on transitional arrangements. He mentioned the Florence speech by the Prime Minister and talked about the significance of that, and then said the negotiations will continue and want them to continue positively and constructively. And then he talks about being able to move forward to the second phase of the talks in December. So the key date there is around the middle of December, when the European Council meets next.
Laura, thank you for that. And no, you won't need to watch the evening news tonight, because Laura's brought you up to speed on what you otherwise would have seen on TV. I think what this means for us is that at this stage we might have seen some substantive discussion of issues that are important to the sector, but they're not quite there yet. But they're keen to say that they might be there quite soon. But there's no great detail from that. I'm going to take you to some more mundane things, like what's happened at the Conservative Party conference. Was lucky enough to have my time there. It will be remembered for a speech which Theresa May, the Prime Minister, coughed through, but there were, underneath that, there were some interesting points here about our sector, and some good wording, I think, in terms of the references she scattered through about the life science sector. Also, in the Chancellors Speech, bioscience was named as one of the great industries in the UK, and he was keen to suggest we mustn't underplay the complexities of Brexit, which is good because we know that we've been providing lots of detail about the requirements for our particular sector into his thinking. And I was interested to hear him talk about the transition period as a wasting asset, that in a sense the UK needs clarity on its deal now, because a deal in 2 years' time, or clarity in 2 years' time, is worth less as people have prepared for a harder Brexit. So it was interesting to see that, and I thought it was in line with much of the thinking that we'd had, and was useful. We were fortunate enough to be able to hold a fringe event there, where we were able to make some of the points around, particularly around the importance of talent for our sector, to an interested audience of Conservatives, with an MP who voted for Brexit on the panel, and I'm glad to see that there's some more traction on the people issues. I hope we played our part in putting that on the agenda at that event. I was interested to see, and I'm not sure that we could say that the Conservative Party came out of their conference season united around this. There was quite a lot of reaction to the different speeches, to how Philip Hammond, the Chancellor, was perceived. Boris Johnson did a significant article ahead of it, and we've seen already suggestions of rebellions in Parliament from pro-European Conservative MPs, which means that although things are busy, there is still a fractious political environment, particularly in the Conservative Party at the moment, as indicated by some of these tweets.
So going back to where the government are, in the last month since the last webinar, they've published 2 papers, both on trade policy. One is a draft custom bill, and the other one is on the future of UK trade policy. There's a good cartoon there that we found in the Telegraph, which could also make quite a good trade policy at the moment. So in terms of the custom bill white paper, this follows on from the papers published in the summer, where it looks at the custom bills looking at setting up a standalone customs regime as the UK leaves the EU, and it's looking at new arrangements as close as possible to the EU arrangements, and only to make changes when necessary and when there are no clear benefits to business. As I was saying, it's part of the future partnership, as previously set out in the future partnership paper. They're going to be guided by the government's 3 objectives on trade, which are on the slide, which talk about a frictionless as possible, no hard border between Ireland and Northern Ireland, and establishing an independent trade policy. So the customs bill will provide various negotiation outcomes, include scenarios including a no-deal scenario. But the 2 main proposals, which aim to achieve all 3 of those objectives, are a highly streamed customs arrangement or a new customs partnership. So highly streamed would be basically streamlining everything as it is at the moment, but very streamlined. And the new customs partnership is with no border, but it's using IT and technology to have an innovative border. But this is very untested. So government seeking feedback on the Customs Bill White Paper, and BIA, working with ABPI, will be doing a submission. The other paper that came out is the Trade Bill White Paper. This is looking at establishing an independent trade policy for the UK. So obviously at the moment we have a common external trade policy as part of the EU, and the bill basically seeks to allow government to look at keeping some relationships the same, but also looking at different ways of doing things in the future. They've pulled out 5 different principles which are set out there, so being trade is transparent and inclusive, so Parliament, devolved administration, civil society, public, etc. will have a role in this, supporting a rules-based global trading environment, and so this is around WTO and what happens to that going forward. Looking at our trade arrangements is focusing on ability to negotiate new FTAs as we go forward, supporting developing countries to reduce poverty, and then ensuring a level playing field. BIA is also working with the ABPI to respond to the Migration Advisory Committee consultation. The deadline's next week. We have a very, very advanced draft, which is in a near final state, which includes a number of case studies that BIA members have sent in. So it's looking at different areas, both around what are the key skills that we're looking for from EEA workers and also non, and how migration's changed, and also sort of what type of workforce we're looking for in the future.
So I was fortunate enough to go to the latest ministerial meeting on the life science sector with regard to Brexit this week with UK ministers. It was great that AstraZeneca and GSK were able to co-chair the group, and it wasn't just us, the ABPI, the ABHI were there, and as you can see, every acronym in government was represented. What it meant was there was a great representation from the government side. You'll know well the 4 songs we sing in our set: trade, regulation, movement of talent, research, collaboration and people, and we were able to update on all of those. As you can see, there's been some significant developments in terms of more detail from the government about how they're thinking around trade and customs, and what was fantastic from my perspective was strong recognition from the government. Lots of thanks to the sector, to the trade associations, and particularly to the members of the trade associations for the hard work that's been put into informing and shaping some of our thoughts on this, and I know that they have been well received by industry. If you think back, this is the group that has enabled the UK government to make significant moves on its regulatory policy, looking for close alignment. I think we were able to provide significant input into thinking around trade, customs and other things. One thing that I think we stressed was the importance of timelines and a transition period, and how for a long lead industry like our own, the vital importance of knowing in advance where we are moving to and having sufficient time to be able to do that. And I think there was a good understanding that with complicated supply chain, vital products which are vital to human health, doing this carefully was well understood by government. Obviously, there's a negotiation, there's a political context to this, but I think this was well regarded. And the fact that they all wanted to meet us again before the end of the year shows that there is a real engagement with this process.
And so in Parliament, the repeal bill is going through Parliament, but not at the moment. So there's been quite a lot of press around, has it been delayed? So the bill has had its second reading in Parliament, so it's out, Commons has discussed it, it should be going through the committee stage at the moment. There have been hundreds of amendments tabled, some looking to challenge the powers of the bill and some looking to have a soft Brexit. It had been anticipated that the committee stage would start this week, but it's not been timetabled until after the autumn recess, so not till mid-November. Some are seeing this as concerns in government that there's so many amendments and they don't have a massive majority and they're going to have some issues, whereas government is just saying but it was never timetabled to happen now. But given the size of the bill and the importance of getting it through, you would expect that they would be trying to get everything done as soon as possible. At the same time, a number of select committees are doing inquiries. There's two which we're focusing our efforts on in conjunction with ABPI. We're doing joint responses to the Health Select Committee and to the Business Select Committee. So health is obviously specifically focusing on Brexit and medicines. The BEIS committee is looking more around the impact on business. It's looking at a number of different sectors and has a specific sector focus on pharmaceuticals. We're doing joint submissions with the ABPI, and we're just in the final stages of finalising those before they're submitted. We're hearing about a lot of upcoming inquiries from other select committees in the House of Lords and in the House and in the Commons. I think we'll probably expect one soon from international trade. The Exiting EU committee is doing something. We are going to respond to those most relevant to our sector and where needed to the others. But given that there's so many, we're going to try and prioritise for those that are really impactful on our industry. Next week, the Law of Science and Technology inquiry into life sciences and industrial strategy is continuing with oral evidence session. There was a session this week where AZ and GSK gave evidence. There was a lot of discussion in that on Brexit, even though the inquiry isn't around Brexit. So we'd anticipate Steve, next week when you give evidence being asked about Brexit.
Yeah, if you're at a loose end next Tuesday morning, then I will be on whether it is the parliamentary channel and an obscure number on your TV giving evidence to the House of Lords. I think I'd say that this is an area where it's a bit like London buses. Nothing comes along for a while and then there's lots coming along at once. I think that the importance of these is that they inform a parliamentary debate which may be significant in the discussion around the actual legislation that's going through. But I'd say to members, we've probably got these handled at a trade association level, and if you're looking to focus your efforts, this may not be the place where much value can be gained as a result of significant input. So I would say we can monitor them and we will prioritise them, but I'd expect to see a slew of these coming forward in the coming weeks and months. So taking us away from the Westminster and Whitehall and having a look at EU developments, the European Medicines Agency process for deciding where its new offices are going to be and how it gets there is underway, and we are well through this process onto bucket 4, as you can see it here. In September, the Commission's published its assessment on EMA bids, and we're still expecting the vote and decision at the end of November, with the plan for the EMA to be fully operational in its new location by 29th of March 2019. There's quite a lot of talk following the staff survey last month that said that many EMA staff wouldn't relocate if the agency moved, and it was interesting to see that there is an OJEC tender published for temporary workers to enable the agency to continue to function going forward. So I think there's significant concern, and they're starting to put money into how are they going to keep the lights on and the show on the road during this period. The European Commission assessment of EMA bids was published on the last day possible, on the 30th of September. The link is here as to what you think of it. There's no ranking or shortlist. It focuses on the decision criteria listed here. It's available for your delight if you want to see it. I don't think it adds a great deal to the price of fish. More important is the EMA Brexit Preparedness Business Continuity Plan. Do put that wonderful mouthful into Google and you will find it straight away. What this is the EMA making public how they plan to work during this period and prioritising their activities if they fear that their capacity to operate is denuded as a result of this process. And these are the ones that they have put as the absolute category 1 highest priority activities. No real suggestions of anything unusual there, but you can see where things like paediatrics, SME office activities important for BIA members, influenza pandemic they are in buckets 2 medium priority activities. So I think that's it's interesting to see that they're setting out what they think that they can and can't do if things if they have challenges to their capability, and I think this document is well worth a look. Came out this week, Laura?
On Tuesday.
Yeah, came out Tuesday. I think it's been very good to see patient organisations contributing to the debate around the location of the European Medicines Agency. This from European Patients Forum, again earlier this week, is an important document, and I think makes some points that wouldn't be unusual to us about the vital role in safeguarding public health, but asking the agency must be taken based objectively on the best interests of patients and public health, not the political or economic interests of any particular member states. A useful one to have in your back pocket if you're talking to people, and one to be aware of. We're going to I'm slightly changing tack here to talk about what the BIA is going to do going forwards, and in addition to these webinars, which we'll continue to do, we are going to do some briefing seminars for members to guide and facilitate discussions around Brexit. This is less to inform you as to what's happening and more to enable members to discuss amongst themselves company approaches to what's going on and what companies are doing to prepare, and how companies are prioritising or thinking about practical activities that need to be done now, what things people are prepared to wait a while and see what happens on, and provide a sort of a facilitated discussion of activity in these areas that members are involved in. We've had some of this discussion in the social areas of the Bioscience Forum. I've had these in BIA committee discussions. We thought it was useful to pull some of these together, and this is what we're going to do for the next period of time. We're going to start with one about regulation. We'll do another one on movement of people, trade and research, collaboration and finance in the coming weeks and months. If you're interested, they're advertised on the BIA website, and you can email biaevents@bioindustry.org if you wish to come. We're anticipating that these will be not very large meetings, but small enough to be able to have a meaningful dialogue, and therefore I'm very keen that people don't take a seat and then not turn up. So we'll probably have some process to ensure that, that if you can't come, you tell us in advance, please. So I think where we've got to within 20 minutes is deal negotiations are at a key point, and thank you, Laura, for giving us up to the minute Katya Adler style reportage there today. The UK government's continuing to publish its papers, but having a tougher time in Parliament, and we're starting to see some of that grind happening. The BIA is continuing to respond to government consultations and engaging on the key issues you've asked us to do. The EMA decision is nearly here, and I think that may well be context changing with regard to the thinking around regulation. We'll go from a position where there are many candidates to one winner, and then many countries which are not winners. And that's an important point, and that's less than a month away now. So I hope you found this useful, and we continue to provide an update. I'm happy to take some questions, and if you've typed them in, I will endeavour to answer them. So I'm glad to see there's one already. Is there any indication that the government is prepared to consider tailoring immigration rules to allow easier immigration of skilled workers where their skills are needed, or do they just look at total immigrant numbers? Indications of government policy in this area are hard to fathom, I think would be my opening position on this. Undoubtedly, there has been a theme through government statements around ensuring easy flows of skilled workers into the UK, being a prime consideration in the thinking of the construction of a new immigration system. In a sense, the question is, how does that work for EU nationals who at the moment have no barriers to immigration? Likewise, they do look at total immigrant numbers and have yet to be dissuaded of having a cap, and that's obviously been the government policy to introduce a cap to numbers, which is a crude indication. So they're trying to have a bit of both of this one to your question. Not a lot of absolute clarity at the moment. Do look at the Prime Minister's Facebook article if you're interested in the tone of how they're looking to position that discussion at the moment, particularly around remaining people who've come from the EU who wish to remain in the UK. And we see the Migration Advisory Committee consultation as the main point to input on the policy of this. I'm not seeing any other questions. There is the opportunity to type them in Aha. Quick question on the burden sharing model of the MHRA want to follow, and if the negotiators for this model understand that it is based on keep the same regulations to enable the MHRA to continue to contribute or lead assessment. Just reading this, bear with me a sec. It seems difficult objective to me. Let me answer that question like this. I think that the objective that we've coalesced around as an industry is to ensure as close as possible alignment between the systems in the future that the MHRA will run and the EMA will run. In a sense, we are lucky here that the EMA was established in a previous era of European institutions, and in a sense is a collection of national agencies with a project management organisation and a facilitator in the EMA that sits astride a number of expert groups. The way in which those expert groups plug into the EMA vary from centralised procedure, decentralised procedure, devices and such like, and the way to which countries that are not within the EU engage with that are different at different places. So I think there is a practical way in which you could look at that model quite pragmatically and come up with a way for expertise to continue to be organised and inputted in that system if there was the desire to do so. I still believe that that's what we should be looking to do. I'm not sure whether we have convinced everybody that that's the right way to go yet, but I think in terms of minimising disruption, enabling speed of access for new therapies to patients, and the continued scientific cooperation, which I think benefits everyone, there are good arguments to do this, and I'm keen that we press the case for doing that. What are your thoughts around the possibility of a hard Brexit, and with the banks working towards a hard Brexit, is it time we followed suit? Well, it's certainly the case that there has been talk in the newspapers around some in Parliament wanting to make sure that there are preparations for a no deal or very hard Brexit, a crashing out Brexit, a reverting to WTO rules Brexit. It remains on the table. It's hard to discern whether that's a negotiating tactic by those who wish to stop there being any backsliding from Brexit happening. And certainly, if you take a fundamental view of Article 50, it's possible to see that now is a transition period. The UK is going to come out in March 2019, and therefore that's the only option we should prepare for. I think I'm taking a more nuanced view, which is, it seems to me, reading the puffs of white smoke as best you can out of Brussels and London, that although there is going to be tough negotiation in the next quarter, there is a desire to get to a deal, and some form of deal will be put to the institutions that need to ratify it, be the UK Parliament, the European Parliament, and the other parliaments in Europe. I think that would be the better outcome for industry. We need to prepare for all options. One of the reasons I'm keen to have the discussion amongst companies is different companies need to make different decisions at different timeframes, and I'm aware that some companies need certainty today. Some companies are prepared to have a nuanced view on different parts of their organisation over the coming months. But that's why I'm keen to facilitate this discussion. I don't think it would be a great outcome for European patients, for the UK or the European life science industry, for a cliff edge Brexit to take place in March 2019, and therefore I'm certainly not going to advocate for it. And I think we all have to put our thinking into the likelihood of this. At the moment, for me, it's a possibility we need to plan for, but it's not the only possibility. Thank you. I think in terms of what we're doing next, we plan to be with you shortly after the EMA decision has taken place. We're expecting it on the 20th, so we're thinking, well, timetable for the 21st for the next one of these. If that process changes, we might be flexible during that week, so that's the Tuesday rather than the Friday, is our thinking at the moment. If you're into bioprocessing or the manufacturing of biologics, our fantastic 14th annual Bioprocess Conference is in Cardiff at the end of November. I'll do another Brexit briefing on the 15th of December. We'll have mince pies, I'm informed, and mistletoe. And then if you're thinking ahead and you want to come and see us, tickets are available for the BIA Gala dinner on the 25th of January. That is the midwinter highlight you do not want to miss. We'll have over 650 of us there, and we're starting to populate our events plan for next year. We have a Chief Medical Officers Summit in London on March the 5th, which is something new. If you've not joined us and you like the work we do and like to get involved more, come to the sessions. Do please contact Jane Wall on this email. I hope we can. We've demonstrated a degree to which we influence and work in that way. We also connect the community together, and that's best done face to face. And if you're interested, we do have a savings scheme which can save you money on everything from business information through to supplies needed for the lab. With that, I want to thank you for your attendance. Remind you that we'll be doing this Tuesday the 21st on present planning assumptions, and enjoy your weekend if you're off to that. Many thanks.